Hey, what's up? How you doing? Thanks for tuning in. Today we're talking about if you should be a news producer. If you've seen any of my videos, you probably know that I have a decent amount talking about news producing because, spoiler alert, I am a broadcast TV news producer. I've been doing it since high school professionally. I've done it for over a year in my career, and then I did an internship doing it professionally as well. Did it through college, did it through high school. I know a lot about news producing. I've been doing this for literally like upwards of 7 years now, so it's been a while. I know what it takes to be a news producer and to do it at a high level because I am in a top 50 market. And I'm going to dive into, I have written down 8 things that we're going to go through today, talking about basically if things that you should consider, things you should know about news producing, if it is something that you were looking into potentially doing. And some of these things apply across the board to anything in broadcast television. It doesn't necessarily have to be news producing. I will specify when things aren't producer specific and when things are, but a lot of these points will just basically be encompassing if you want to go into the news business in general. So let's get started. First thing that is one of those things that you just have to expect going into it, especially when it's your first couple of years in the business or your first job specifically, weird hours. That's not something that for me is actually much of an issue. I actually am okay with the hours that I work and I actually prefer it, but do not go into news thinking right off the bat you are going to be doing a typical 9 to 5 type job. That is not local news at all. News never stops. I mean, people are pretty much in the station at all times. It's rarely ever empty. People have shifts on the weekends, people have shifts overnight, people have shifts during the day, of course, the normal ones, but it's just not, it's not standard 9 to 5. The closest at my station you can get to a normal position is Monday through Friday, 9:30 to 6:30. That is the most standard, most normal spot you can get. Then you also have midday shifts, which is from like 12 to 9. Then you have shifts that are the night side shifts that are 2:30 to 11:30. And then the morning shifts I'm not as familiar with because I've never worked mornings, thank goodness, hallelujah. But they're the overnight shifts. Can be like midnight to 9. I think one of the shifts is like 4 to 1, 4 a.m. to 1 p.m. You got potentially some weird hours going on. Also, working weekends is something that a lot of people end up having to do. A lot of people's shifts also are not consistent day to day. So like for me personally, I work weekends, night side, and then I work day side on the weekdays that I work. And my weekends are usually Thursday, Friday. Those are my days off. So Saturday, Sunday, I'm working until close to midnight, and then I have to wake up on Monday morning for my 9:30 to 6:30 shift. Do that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So it's just going to be a little bit weird for people sometimes. Your shifts are just going to be a little bit off, and like I said, for me, I actually like that. I like working nights as opposed to working days. I prefer it because I love to be able to get up in the morning and do my stuff that I need to do and then just work until I go to bed. That's fine with me. I have no problems with that because I'm a night owl and I actually really love working weekends. I don't have to be working them anymore. If I wanted to switch off, I could just ask and I could switch to day side at this point. But I like working the weekend. I like being able to just have my Thursday, Fridays off instead, and then I can get everything I need to get done on those days, like appointments and whatnot, going out to the stores, running errands, if I want to go do something fun, whatever. Like, I do not have to do it on the days that everyone's doing it, which are the weekends. I can do it on days where it's just less crowded out when I'm out and about, because it's like noon on a Thursday, people are at work. Not me. For me, I don't mind the weird hours personally. But that is something that you just do have to know going into it, that it's not a standard 9 to 5. The pay. Anytime someone asks like, hey, what do you do for a living? And I say, oh, I'm a TV news producer. First off, actually, normally the response is, oh, so you're on TV. Which, no one knows what a news producer is if they're not in the news business. I'm not on TV. And then the second thing they generally think is that because I'm in TV, I make a lot of money. That is not the case. TV news producers, TV reporters, pretty much everyone doesn't make great money unless you're like, an anchor who's been doing this for a long time, or you're a manager or whatever, like then you make more money, obviously. But if you are coming into it sort of fresher, you're producer, a reporter, you're not making bank, all right? You're not making six figures. You're not doing outstanding in the money department. You're not flushed with cash, all of the different ways I could say. Basically, you're not going to be rich from this. It is not a job you go into hoping for a big payday. I'm not going to say exactly how much I make for legal reasons. You know, there's a very large range depending on your market, depending on your years of experience that you could be making, but it's basically anywhere from like $25,000 a year upwards of, I don't actually know where the ceiling is for a producer, but I would say it's definitely not in the six figures. So starting line, $25,000-ish, and then upwards of capping it off probably around 90K maybe. Yeah, like if you Google a news producer's salary, you're gonna see basically what I just said. The pay scale says 29,000 to 90,000. Glassdoor says 27 to 67. ZipRecruiter 25, 93. I mean, you're gonna get some varying answers, but clearly none of these are listing six figures. You're gonna cap out in the 90s. And that's not starting out. That is like you've been a producer for a long time. You're probably in a good market, you know, that kind of thing. So if you're just trying to get rich quick, news producing is not your thing. But if you're okay with not making a lot of money, especially right off the bat, then this is fine for you. All right, now let's go into some general skills that you need as a news producer. You need to be punctual. You need to be able to make deadlines. You need to be able to make hard deadlines and just turn content really quickly, essentially. Now, this is not just for producers, just like the salary, the weird hours, none of that was for just producers. That's all encompassing. Also for this as well, news is about the deadlines. News is about, I have a 4 p.m. show that I have to have ready by 4 p.m. It does not matter what happens. It doesn't matter if there's an earthquake, then even more important because you got some news to report on. It doesn't matter if you're having some personal stuff that's going on and you're just like really not motivated to work today. It's not like a job where you can put off some stuff today and do more work tomorrow instead to overcompensate. Like, no. It's really, this job is a day-to-day type of environment. It's not we're doing work over a long period of time. I'm doing more work today, less work this way. I'm building to something. It's very much we're doing all of our work, our best work today, have this show that I worked really hard on today, and then once it's over, it's done, and tomorrow we're going to do it all over again. Reporting is something that it is like that, yes, but you can do things like hold pieces or TSRs or things that are a bit more, building on it. I've been doing research for this. I have an investigative piece that I've been working on for months, and then today it airs, and that's a big deal. That is something that maybe a reporter, and then investigative producers as well. If you're working on a special project, that's one thing. But generally, on a more day-to-day average basis, it is very much you just got your hard deadline, you gotta meet today, and then you just do that every single day for the rest of your life. Which I actually personally really like. I like once my day is over, I have finished my work for the day and I don't have to worry about or think about that anymore. I just move on to the next day and I do it all over again. Maybe if that's not your thing, maybe don't look into news producing, or maybe look into more special projects. You also have to be detail-oriented because in news, the producer is kind of the person who puts everything together and who sees all the little details of a show and who puts them together and who makes sure that they're there. Something as little as, that little live bug that you see when there's a live shot or something in the TV and it just says live and then the location underneath it on your screen. That's what a producer makes that. You have to remember to put it into the slug for that live shot. Something as little as that, you have to make sure that you're hitting all of those tiny little details to make your show the best it can be. So if you're in school right now and you're thinking, what are the skills that I'm good at in school that are going to translate into being a good news producer? What if I suck at something in school? Well, I need to do that as a news producer. Let me tell you, the only things you need to be good at from a school standpoint going into news producing, writing, grammar, and just a smidgen of math. Not much math, just a smidgen, and it is time math. As far as any of the other subjects, you don't have to be good at science or history or anything like that. Writing, grammar, time math. The writing and grammar, probably obvious. The producer does a lot of writing, and so you are going to want to make sure, obviously, that you are a good writer, a fast writer, and you're good at grammar, spelling, all that kind of stuff, because when you are typing out lower thirds, those little graphics, Typos happen, spelling errors happen, grammar, just any sort of thing like that that's incorrect obviously is not great, doesn't look great on the station. Obviously it still happens. We still have typos because we're human and we have a lot of stuff that we're working on all day, and you're making a lot of graphics, you're writing a lot of stuff, you're going to have little typos. That's what you have extra eyes for as your executive producer, to go through and check all that. And you should be obviously double checking it yourself as well to try to catch those typos. But if you're really not great at grammar, you're really not great at spelling, you're probably not going to catch those mistakes you're making because you don't know that you're making a mistake. The time math is for the fact that you time out your shows. So you mostly need it for when you're boothing. Things might change and you might need to just do some math really quickly in your head to know what to kill, like a story to kill, in order to make up the time that you've lost, or if you need to fill in time. Programs like EMPS, the rundown software that I use at my station, has the time at the bottom for you, and you have this little time pacer thing. I don't really know what it's called. It's like a little ticker thing that you click, and when you hit a new story, you hit the space bar and it goes to the next like little slug in your rundown. It times out for you at the bottom. It'll tell you if you're over, under, and how many seconds. And that's great. That makes you be able to not have to focus on the math as much. But if your software at your station doesn't have that, or if for some reason it breaks down and doesn't work, like that's happened to me once, where like the ticker, just the little time bar thing stopped working for me, and I just had to calculate back time in my head as the show was going on. So it's a really good skill to be able to do it, just in case you don't have something like that. All right, another thing that you have to be good at is making decisions under pressure, because like I said, it is live, obviously. You do have to make some very quick decisions under the pressure of knowing you don't get a redo. It's live TV. So you just sort of have to make sure that you make the right decision the first time. So being cool under pressure is a great, important skill for a producer to have. Not saying you can't do the job if you're not good under pressure, but it's going to make things difficult for you, and you're probably not going to be as great as a producer as somebody who is good under pressure. And that's something that you can just work on and build up as time goes on. If you're brand new and this is your first time news producing, and you go in as your first job being a news producer, and you're probably like in a lower market, and you're gonna make some mistakes because it's hard to be cool under pressure when something is live and you're not really certain on what you're doing yet. You're still getting your footing on your job. That's difficult. But once you get more comfortable with producing and you are confident in yourself, and you know, that's another thing. You have to be confident when you're a news producer that you know what you're doing, because if you're like, I don't really know what decision I should make here, when it's live and you need to make a decision fast, you're just going to not make a decision, and then that screws things up for your show. So you have to be comfortable just being like, this is what we're doing, I know what we're doing, and we're going for it. And even if you don't know what you're doing, you still got to be confident and just make the decision. And then if it fails, then you'll know for next time, and you will learn from that mistake, because people turn to you as the producer when you're live. If something's going wrong or there's a problem or whatever, people at the director, everyone's going to say, what do you want to do? You have to be the one to make the call to change stuff. You are keeping the show afloat. You are keeping everything going. So whenever there's a mistake, an error, a technical problem, you are the one that has to decide what to do in order to still keep the show going. So you got to be confident in what you're doing, and you got to tell everybody else what you're doing. You got to communicate that too. That's one reason you have to be cool under pressure. If you are like freaking out in your head and you're thinking of what you can do, but you're not really sure, then you're not communicating that with your director, because you're not talking, because you're freaking out and you're having like a little baby breakdown in your head. You can't do that. You have to communicate what you're thinking to the team in a coherent and just good, like not anxious, not freaking out way, in order to make sure that things go right. Also, they're looking at you to make the decision, and if you're freaking out and you're super stressed and you're screaming or whatever, which happens, probably gonna stress everyone else out too. You need to be calm and just like, all right, guys, this is what we're doing. We're gonna fix this by doing this, you know what I mean? So to recap, some of the skills that you need to be a news producer: you have to be detail-oriented, you have to be punctual, you have to be good at making hard deadlines and staying on track. You have to be good at staying cool under pressure. You have to be good at communicating and multitasking, which I didn't really talk too much about multitasking, but like when a lot of things are going on in live TV, you have to be able to be talking and maybe be checking in with your reporters if they're live somewhere. You have to also, you might need to be like changing a story, adding in some breaking news, something like that. Multitasking is another skill that you'll need. You'll also need to be good at grammar, writing, and time math. Another thing is knowing the newsworthiness of something, because as a producer, you are the one choosing some of the pacer stories, like the shorter, like 30-second, 1-minute stories that go into your show. And you're also in charge of organizing the entire show and putting the news where you think it goes best in the show, like picking the lead of the day, picking the things that you're going to put at the top of the show versus the bottom of your show. And to do that, in order to make those decisions, you're basing it off of the newsworthiness of those stories. Newsworthiness goes into timeliness, how important it is to your audience, and that just comes with knowing your audience in your area. The location, is it around you or is it a little bit farther away? And then just general impact in the world. Knowing those things is very important for a news producer. Like that is up there. That's super important. One of the most important things you need to know, how important news is for your area. All right, and the last thing I want to talk about isn't a skill. It's just a thing that happens when it comes to being a news producer, and that is you are in the know about a lot of stuff all the time. There's no such thing as taking a news break, turning off the news, unplugging a bit from any sort of news. There's literally no such thing as that, because it is your job to be in the know about everything. Like to a certain extent, I think that's a good thing. I think it's nice that I have a job where I don't slack off on knowing what's going on in the world. I'm always informed. I always know the big stories that are going on, and I always know what's going on around me locally, which I think is also very important that a lot of people might not focus on as much because they're more, in the sort of world sphere, the national sphere, seeing the big stories on social media, and they're not as plugged in on the smaller stuff that's going on in their own community. I think that's super great that I have a job where I am very plugged in on that. And it's also helped me multiple times just like find something to do. Like I know the local events that are coming up because I write stories about them. I know, some local food around me that I might not have even heard about, except we did a story covering them that they just opened or something. You know what I mean? I love that aspect of my job, but I also have to say that when you can't unplug from news, unless you're like going on vacation or something, then it can be very stressful because everybody needs a mental break every now and then from the news. And I can't specify that anymore than with 2020, okay? Having to constantly know every new coronavirus update, having to constantly see every single little thing that was going on with that, and then being plugged in when the Black Lives Matter protests were happening around George Floyd's death and Breonna Taylor's death, the election. Everything that was going on could be very stressful, and not to say that you shouldn't know about all that stuff, I think you should, but just the fact that anyone else who's not working in news can just take a break from that for a second. They can just unplug and say, I don't want to know every single thing that's going on right now because 2020 is sucking and it's also sucking my soul out of my body. So I'm just going to dip my head into the sand for a couple of days and not worry about it. That's not an option for news producers. It can be a very tough job on mental health when you're accompanying that aspect of it with the constant pressure of the deadlines and breaking news coming in and the weird hours. It can just be a job that strains people's mental health. I've talked to a lot of people who say that news producers a lot of times have a career that is more short-lived than a lot of other careers, because once you're in it for, say, 5 years, you kind of are like, okay, I'm a little bit burnt out now, I need to take a break. And I'm not saying every producer does that by any means, but it's just, burnout is a common thing in this industry. And so it's something that you have to be aware of, and you have to be able to take mental health breaks. You have to go on vacations, you have to unplug from the news when you can. But anyway, guys, those are all of my little tips, little things that I think are important to consider if you are thinking about being a news producer. If you have any questions or want any more content about news producing, I have plenty on my page, and I'll put a link to a playlist at the end of this video. Anyway, if you have any questions, just let me know in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. If you did like it, you can give it a thumbs up. You can also subscribe to me if you would like. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.